In October, the Wall Street Journal revealed the Justice Department had obtained a secret court order to force Google and the internet provider Sonic.net to turn over information about Appelbaum's email accounts. William Binney, Laura Poitras, and Jacob Appelbaum will be speaking tonight at the Whitney Museum here in New York for a teach-in on surveillance. The three of them join us here in our studio together in a broadcast for the first time. We're going to begin with William Binney. You worked for the National Security Agency for more than 3 decades.
Almost 4.
Almost 4 decades. Yeah. You, for a time, directed the NSA's World Geopolitical and Military Analysis Reporting Group. Tell us what you did, and then why you left and what happened to you afterwards.
Well, I was the technical director of that group that basically looked at the world. So we looked at all the technical problems of in the world and see how we could solve collection, analysis, and reporting on military and geopolitical issues all around the world, every country in the world. So it was a rather large technical problem to tackle, but and one of the largest problems we thought we had was looking at the World Wide Web and all the ballooning and mushrooming communications in the world. And our ability to deal with that was diminishing over time, so I kind of referred to it as our inability to keep up with the rate of change. So we were falling behind the rate of change. I had a very small group of people in a lab, and we decided to attack that problem. We did it by looking at how we could graph the network of communications and all the communications in the world, and then focus in on that graph and use the graph to limit what we wanted to attack. And we basically succeeded at that, but in the process, of course, we scooped up Americans from different places, so we had to protect their identities according to our laws and privacy rights of U.S. citizens. So under UCIT 18, we built in protections to anonymize their identities, so you couldn't really tell who you were looking at.
And that's because the NSA could do surveillance from abroad, but not of U.S. citizens.
Well, and you see the World Wide Web routes things all over, so you never really know where U.S. citizens' communications are going to be routed. So if you were collecting somewhere else on another continent, you could still get U.S. citizens. That was a universal problem. So we devised how to do that and protect U.S. citizens. And this was all before 9/11. And we devised how to do that, made that effective and operating. So we were actually prepared to deploy about 8 months before 9/11 and actually have a system that would run and manage the what I call 20 terabytes a minute of activity. But after 9/11, all the wraps came off for NSA, and they decided to, between the White House and NSA and CIA, they decided to eliminate the protections of U.S. citizens and collect on domestically. So they started collecting from a commercial, the one commercial company that I know of that participated, provided over 300, well, probably on the average about 320 million records of communications of a U.S. citizen to a U.S. citizen inside this country.
What company?
AT&T. It was long-distance communications. So they were providing billing data. At that point, I knew I could not stay because it was a direct violation of the constitutional rights of everybody in the country. Plus, it violated the Pen Register Law and Stored Communications Act, the Electronic Privacy Act, the Intelligence Acts of 1947 and 1978. I mean, it was just a whole series of, plus all the laws covering federal communications governing telecoms. I mean, all those laws are being violated, including the Constitution. And that was a decision made that wasn't going to be reversed, so I could not stay there. I had to leave.
I wanted to get back to, for a moment, when you say that you were developing a way to cope with the fact that the agency was falling behind, just because the sheer volume of the material that they were sweeping up was so great that it was impossible at times to find the important intelligence material. So you, in essence, were creating a program that filtered out the valuable stuff.
That's right.
What did it have a name, the program?
Well, it's called Thin Thread. I mean, Thin Thread was our a test program that we set up to do that. By the way, I viewed it as we never had enough data. Okay, we never got enough. It was never enough for us to work at, because I looked at velocity, variety, and volume as all positive things. Volume meant you got more about your target. Velocity meant you got it faster. Variety meant you got more aspects. These were all positive things. All we had to do was to devise a way to use and utilize all of those inputs and be able to make sense of them, which is what we did.
And when they didn't use your system, the NSA developed another, or attempted to develop another system?
Well, that one failed. They didn't produce anything with that one.
And that one was called?
Trailblazer. Yeah.
And Trailblazer.
I called it 5-year plan number 1. 5-year plan number 2 was turbulence.
And Trailblazer cost how much money?
I think my sense was a little over $4 billion.
$4 billion,
right.
But it was scuttled. It was done away with in 2006.
Yes, 5, I think it was, but yes, that's right. And we developed our program with $3 million, roughly.
And Trailblazer was largely developed by SAIC.
Well, there were contributing contractors, yeah, but I think they had the lead. They were the lead contractors in some of the contracts, yeah.
And why did they go with this one, though ultimately they did not use it? This is under Michael Hayden at the time.
Yes, well,
under the Bush administration.
Well, I thought my sense was it was a good employment program, and it was a large budget program. They would spend money, a lot of money, so it would build a budget and
go to a major weapons manufacturer, right. And heads of the agency, National Security Agency, would go back and forth working at NSA, working at SAIC.
We called it an incestuous relationship, yeah.
What happened to you after you quit? You quit within a month of the 9/11 attacks.
31st of October of 2001, yeah.
And then what happened?
Well, we tried to form up a company to at least help the government to deal with some of the massive data problems they had, like even in the FBI, and also Customs and Border Protection and NRO and various other agencies. And every time we went somewhere to try to develop something, we got canceled. Our contract got canceled for basically because we have heard anyway that they were told that certain agencies didn't want them hiring us, so they didn't want us working for them. So.
And before you left, in that short period when it became obvious to you the direction that the NSA was going to, when you raised objections or raised concerns, what was the response?
Well, I went directly to the Intelligence Committee because it was their job because first of all, when that happened, I mean, the people they had to use to set it up, since they used part of the program we developed to set it up, they had to use our people to set it up initially because no one else knew the code and no one else knew how to get it operating. So when they did that, those people came to me and said, they're doing this, and they told me what they were doing. And so I immediately went to the Intelligence Committee because the Intelligence Committees were formed to have oversight over the intelligence community to make sure they didn't monitor U.S. citizens. This was a fallout of the Church Committee back in the 70s. The member of the staff that I went to Porter Goss, who was chairman of that committee at the time, and he referred her to General Hayden for any further. When it was the job of that committee to do the oversight on all this domestic spying, and they weren't doing it, okay? Basically, at the time, according to Dick Cheney's interview on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, he said at that time, only the majority and minority leaders of the HIPSI and the SISI were involved in having knowledge about this program, Stellar Wind, which you had talked with Tom Drake about.
The former NSA employee who was also a whistleblower. And
that was the program, of course, that Director Mueller reported was the issue that with the hospital visit with Ashcroft. So,
and explain that very briefly to remind people.
Well, the whole program, I guess, had to be reauthorized every 45 days, and they had to have the director of NSA, the director of CIA, and the Attorney General sign an affidavit that they still needed the program, and it was legal. And when Comey and Goldsmith and the DOJ decided that this really was a violation of the Constitution and was illegal, then that issue came up, and that's what got everybody kind of disturbed and ready actually to resign in 2004, early 2004, I believe that was, and as a part, it was coming up for reauthorization, and so Gonzalez left the White House along with one other person I can't remember, and went to the hospital where Ashcroft was, because he had pancreatitis, I believe, and was in the hospital, and Comey was acting Attorney General. And so at that point, they went to Ashcroft to see if he would overrule Comey, who had denied a reauthorization and declared it basically illegal. And so they tried to get Ashcroft to overrule that and went to the hospital to do that. And Director Mueller, I think, also quickly got to the hospital to help ensure that Ashcroft was not taken advantage of, I guess. So,
when was your home raided?
26th of July of 2007.
What happened? Where did you go?
I should say that it was the morning of the second day after Gonzalez's testimony, the then Attorney General Gonzalez's testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee on the TSP, what was called the TSP, which I referred to as a fabricated plan. It was created to cover a number of plans, one of which was Stellar Wind, and the others which they didn't want to discuss, and the others were wiretapping. And so they picked on the wiretapping ones because the public would generally say, yes, anybody that was potentially a terrorist, a foreign terrorist, communicating with anybody in the United States, we want you to monitor their communications. So that was the acceptable part of it, but it was grouped with Stellar Wind and some other programs, so that they could give cover to it, talk about some programs, say they're talking about the terrorist surveillance program, but it was basically a group of programs, some of which they did not want to talk about. And he did not testify to that at the, and I believe some of the White House and Feingold, I think, were the two who were on the Senate Intelligence Committee that did challenge him at the time, saying he wasn't being truthful and that he wasn't being completely honest. So.
You live where?
I live in Maryland, actually 4 miles from NSA.
And what happened?
They came busting in.
Who's they?
The FBI, about 12 of them, I think, 10 to 12. They came in with the guns drawn on my house.
Where were you?
I was in the shower. I was taking a shower, so my son answered the door, and they, of course, pushed him out of the way at gunpoint, and came running upstairs and found me in the shower and came in and pointed a gun at me while I was,
Pointed a gun at your head?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Wanted to make sure I saw it and that I was duly intimidated, I guess.
And what did they do at that point? Did they begin questioning you, or they just took you to headquarters, or?
No, yeah, they basically separated us from. I was separated from my family. They took me on the back porch, and they started asking me questions about it. They were actually basically wanting me to tell them something that would implicate someone in a crime. And so I told them that I didn't really know. They wanted to know about certain people. They were the ones that were being raided at the same time. People who we all signed, those who were raided that day, all of us signed the DOD IG complaint. We were the ones who filed that complaint.
The Pentagon.
The Pentagon DOD
Inspector
IG
General complaint.
Against NSA, yes. Talking about fraud, basically corruption, fraud, waste, and abuse.
Tom Drake was raided at the same time.
No, he was raided in November of that year. We were just the ones who signed it were raided.
So, who were the other people that were raided that same day?
Diane Rourke, Kirk Wiebe, and Ed Loomis.
Diane Rourke worked for the Senate committee.
Diane was the senior staffer. She had the NSA account on the HIPSI side, on the House side. So she was monitoring, she was doing oversight. She was doing real oversight. The others weren't. Basically, the others were simply taking what the NSA said verbatim and taking them at their word. So basically that was not oversight. But Diane would probe and be prying into what they were saying to find out really clearly what was going on. And
ostensibly, they were searching for who was leaking information to who had leaked information to the New York Times.
That was the pretext, yes. But I accused them of being sent there by someone outside the FBI, and that their body language told me that I hit it right on the head. So, and I also, after a while, they were questioning me. I couldn't tell them anything because I didn't know anything that would implicate any of the four of us. So.
They were looking for leaks.
Well, that was the pretext. The leak to give the New York Times thing. The real thing, what they were really doing was retribution and intimidation, so we didn't go to the judiciary